Part 7. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 61. Chen Hua, go pick up all those people's storage bags. Zuyun said, looking at the corpses on the ground. Zuyun, I didn't contribute much, so I'm sorry to share. Chen Hua lowered his head and remembered the first time he shared the sword with Zuyun. Not only did he get into trouble, but now he has no strength at all. Take it as long as you want. When we get back to the Lingjian sect mountain, we can divide it up. Zuyun felt helpless. Chen Hua, who was so cold and ruthless in the sect, was like a kitten outside the sect. Oh! Chen Hua seemed to hear some dissatisfaction from Zuyun's tone, so he didn't dare to refuse any more and agreed. A total of 7 people took 7 storage bags and put away their magical weapons along the way. Zuyun then took Chen Hua and returned along the original route unhurriedly. Fortunately, there was no trouble along the way, and the two of them returned to the foot of the Spirit Sword Sect mountain smoothly. Don't rush back yet, come here. Zuyun pointed to a restaurant and said. At this time, Chen Hua would not refute Zuyun's intention at all. He said whatever he said, just like his younger brother. After opening a room, Zuyun opened all the storage bags and counted the harvest. Chen Hua's eyes lit up. There are a total of more than 10 storage bags, containing nearly 1,000 spiritual stones, as well as some messy elixirs and various magical weapons. Zuyun looked at each item, but there was nothing good. After pondering for a moment, Zuyun said, let's split the spirit stone in half. I'll give you all these elixirs and all the magic weapons will be mine. How about that? Ah! Zuyun, give me so much. Chen Hua was shocked. I thought that it would be good if I could get more than 100 spirit stones, but I didn't expect that Zuyun was almost evenly matched with him. I said, if I tell you to take it, just take it. But, you must not let you know that you have so many things on you, do you hear me? Stop me and you. People in the sect are all poor. If they knew we had so many things, who knows what would happen? Don't you think so? Zuyun was not worried about this, but was afraid that people would know that he had collected so many magic weapons. This is not normal. Oh well. How could Chen Hua know what Zuyun was thinking? Anyway, he was extremely grateful to him. At the same time, he secretly swore in his heart that he would not even tell his master. Okay, let's go in separate parts quickly. Zuyunzhen smiled, took more than 500 spiritual stones, and put all the magical weapons into his bag. These magic weapons are not very useful to him anymore. With Wan Laojian's sword, he can use the sword energy to release it without damage. At least before the foundation building period, he didn't need to prepare any more magic weapons. The reason why I search for these useless magical weapons is to refine the materials and improve my own weapon refining level. This time at the market, I mainly prepared elixirs for alchemy and materials for intermediate talismans. I didn't have any money left to prepare for the weapon refining. And it was impossible to go to the market in a short time, so I could only pick up some rubbish to practice my skills. By the way, you go back first. Your master doesn't like me. It would be bad if I meet him. Zuyun said. Okay, what should I do if I want to find you in the future? Chen Hua felt that what Zuyun said made sense, but he didn't want to lose contact with Zuyun, so he asked quickly. So, if you want to find me, just come to the valley and carve a cross on the ground. How about waiting for me at the yin time of the next day at the Misty Sword Cliff? Okay, it's settled. Chen Hua was very happy, this way the master would not find out that they were friends. And being discovered at Magian Cliff can also be said to be an accidental encounter. After sending Chen Hua away, Zuyun was not in a hurry to return to the clan. Instead, he took some gold and silver and planned to buy some things for mortals. Thinking that Sun Suanhua and Menghui were leaving, they wanted to give them some leaving gifts. If it is used by monks, these two people will definitely look down on it. A foundation building period, a pill forming period. Thinking of this, Zuyun couldn't help but smile bitterly. I bought an exquisite jade hairpin for Menguia, and a dragon-shaped jade pendant for Sun Suanhua. There were also some bits and pieces. After that, Zuyun returned to Lingjian sect. Hey, fifth junior brother, you're back so soon. Qin Liken couldn't help but smile when he saw Zuyun. Well, after meeting my father, I left some gold and silver and came back. I'm afraid that if I stay too long, I'll be moved and reluctant to leave. That's right, monks and mortals are not the same kind of people. Qin Liken smiled and took out a book, found Zuyun's name and made a mark to indicate that he was back. By the way, senior brother Li Cheng, has anything happened in the sect these days? It's nothing, Qin Liken shook his head, and suddenly said, no, there was a 5-year-old girl who came to pay homage to the mountain gate alone just now. Do you know what spiritual root she has? 5-year-old, Zuyun's mind immediately recalled the scene when he met Chen Hua before, a petite body staggering on the mountain steps. Yes, that's amazing, Qin Liken said with excitement. I tested her spiritual roots, and I found out that she has ice spiritual roots. What? Ice spirit root? Zuyun was stunned. There is no ice among the 5 elements. Hey, you don't know this, right? Qin Liken showed a proud look and said, the ice spirit root is a mutated spiritual root of the water element. Moreover, he is also a single element ice spirit root. This is incredible, a genius among geniuses. That little girl and I, he said, she came here alone to invite people to write to me. The little girl agreed. Now, I have a lot of resources to reward her. As he said that, Qin Liken's eyes sparkled. He was weak in strength and relatively cowardly in nature. He did not dare to go down the mountain to do tasks, nor did he dare to go to the mountains to find some seedlings, so he became the guard of the mountain gate and collected meager resources. By the way, Qin Liken suddenly looked solemn again and said, fifth junior brother, no one else knows about this, so please don't tell others. Otherwise, the reward will be gone. Zuyun smiled and said, don't worry, senior brother. I stay in the valley on weekdays. I'm not familiar with any of my fellow sections at most, I'm just as good as Big Dog. But Big Dog is devoted to training, so I won't go there if nothing happens. Find him. That's true, Qin Liken breathed a sigh of relief, smiled and said, fifth junior brother, I just secretly informed the sect master that that girl is junior brother Meng's biological junior sister. Zuyun laughed and said, are the junior sisters also considered relatives? Of course, we both worship under the same master, why don't we still kiss? The two chatted casually for a few words, and Zuyun returned to the valley. No matter how many geniuses come, it has nothing to do with him. He just wanted to send Sun Suanhua and Menguia away as soon as possible, and then he could enter the Dao-glazed mirror to practice with peace of mind. After passing through the fog formation, Zuyun felt relaxed for no reason. He took a deep breath, it was still a familiar smell. Before he could enjoy it, a figure rushed over. My dear, you are finally back. If you don't leave, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave. Sun Suanhua was walking with the steps of the secret of immortality, which Zuyun had never seen before. What's going on? Nothing major happened to the sect? Could it be that the people from Wanjian Mountain have already arrived? In the blink of an eye, Sun Suanhua had already put his arms around Zuyun's shoulders and said, good disciple, something big has happened. Damn, you didn't know that in the past 2 days, Lin Zhenyang and Mu Logui have broken through a small realm one after another, but I can't help you terrified. Why did you suddenly break through? Zuyun was puzzled, but he didn't find it strange. Sun Suanhua didn't have a strong sense of existence. What does this have to do with whether he can walk or not? These guys must have picked up Wan Laojian's storage bag. As a disciple of Wanjian Mountain, Wan Laojian's net worth must be much richer than that of Lingjian sect. Moreover, they are all swordsmen, so they must have watched after learning Wan Laojian's sword technique. I have enlightened my mind. Hearing this, Zuyun suddenly realized that Sun Suanhua's worries were justified. However, this only adds a small realm, and it has nothing to do with whether he can leave or not. Little kid, you know shit, Sun Suanhua cursed subconsciously. When he saw Zuyun's face turned cold, he quickly smiled and said, "Hey, good disciple, I made a mistake. These two people have just broken through the small realm. It must be for Master to make the elixir. The amount of the elixir will increase all of a sudden, and Master is afraid that if you can't bear it, these two people will break into the valley to question you." Zuyun was stunned for a moment, then laughed loudly and said, "It's okay, Master, just go ahead and let me know what it means to catch the wave behind and die on the beach." When Sun Suanhua heard the first half of the sentence, he felt something was wrong. What does it mean to just go with peace of mind? What's more, this kid is even more insignificant. He even talks about death. He blows his beard and glares, and angrily says, "You little brat, you dare to curse your master and you will die, right?" "Hey," Zuyun said confidently, "Master, this is also a slip of the tongue. Anyway, it will never delay your escape." After saying that, he handed over the dragon-shaped jade pendant bought at the mortal market. "Master, I don't have anything to give as a gift. I just want to leave you a thought. The disciple who was beaten in Yaesu won't be able to recognize you. But we can only recognize each other with this jade pendant." Sun Suanhua was angry and amused, but more moved, but this kid spoke even more excessively. "I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills." Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 62. The sky was getting dark, so Zuyun couldn't go out of the valley to look for Mengwei. He thought about what Sun Suanhua said. Lin Zhenyang and Lin Zhenyang had just broken through, and Mengwei should be fine. He still hadn't learned the Firebird Talisman, so Zuyun came outside Sun Suanhua's house while Sun Suanhua was still there. "Little baby, what's the matter?" Sun Suanhua's sword had been ready a long time ago. When he heard the footsteps, he knew that it was Zuyun who was coming. "Something happened." Zuyun answered. "Can't you talk nicely?" Sun Suanhua couldn't laugh or cry. "Hey, Master, I haven't learned the Firebird Talisman yet." Sun Suanhua pretended to be angry and said, "It's really stupid to pay the mother back, come in." After the words fell, the door opened by itself. It was Zuyun's first time entering this room, and he couldn't help but take a few more glances. "Good boy, I am a poor teacher, but I have nothing good to leave you. I'll just take a look." Zuyun responded casually, then sat on a chair and took out the intermediate talisman paper and cinnabar from his arms. Sun Suanhua suddenly opened his eyes. There must be dozens of these thick stacks of intermediate talisman papers. Isn't this kid going home to visit relatives? Is it possible that his father can still give him spiritual stones to buy this thing? "You kid, where did you get the money? What are you doing? Why can't you see that your apprentice is rich if you are poor?" Zuyun smiled evilly and took out another 100 spirit stones. "Master Yesheng, I'll reward you with these spirit stones." Sun Suanhua's eyes flashed, and then he snorted coldly, "Zuyun, don't bully others too much. I am your master after all. Then do you want it?" Zuyun knew Sun Suanhua well and knew that he was not really angry. "As long as he doesn't force him to call me master, it'll be fine. Of course, I'm just joking. Of course." Sun Suanhua plucked his hands on the table, and all the spiritual stones went into his storage bag, and then he said in a deep voice, "Little boy, don't tell me that your visit to relatives this time is fake, and you kill people and seize treasures. It's true. You are so courageous." Zuyun shook his head and told Sun Suanhua some of the things he encountered along the way. Yunzhou is barren. Not to mention the casual cultivators, even the sect disciples have to do tasks in exchange for resources. If this continues, Yunzhou will. Sun Suanhua sighed and said to Zuyun, "Little boy, you did a good job. These casual cultivators kill people like crazy. Since they have murderous intentions towards you, you must not show mercy. This is the case in Yunzhou, this situation is even worse in Yezhu." Zuyun was stunned and said curiously, "Master, Yezhu's earth veins are not destroyed, spiritual power is abundant, there are naturally more natural materials, earthly treasures and spiritual stone veins, why is it more serious? Little kid, remember this sentence, where there are monks, there will be killings. The companion who stabbed you one moment may stab you twice the next. Taoist companions are birds of the same forest. When disaster strikes, monks fight for their own immortality. Even their bloodline can be cut off ruthlessly, let alone the people they become friends with in the future. The monks fight for immortality, fighting against heaven, fighting against the earth, and even more so against people." Zuyun understood the meaning, nodded, and suddenly asked, "Then if one day, the disciple has a treasure of cultivation, and the master knows about it, will he want to kill me to seize the treasure?" "Ha ha ha," Sun Suanhua laughed, then said with a solemn face, "My child, if you can ask this question, it means you have grown up. Friendship does not matter in the world of immortality, it is only because of interests. If that treasure is of no use to me, why do I want to kill you, my master? But if the treasure can help me improve my cultivation, or increase my longevity, and give me hope of breaking through the pill formation stage, do you think I should grab it or not?" Zuyun put away his smile, nodded and said, "Grab it? That's right, it's about immortality. What does your life and death have to do with me? At most, I want to keep your whole body out of the relationship between master and disciple." Sun Suanhua's tone was heavy, and after he finished speaking, he sighed and said, "My dear, my master should have told you that it was the people from Wanjian Mountain who were chasing me, right?" Zuyun remembered this and said nothing, just nodded. "The one chasing me is my son, he can even kill me, what do you think?" Zuyun was shocked when he heard this. Because the day before, he was chopping wood for Zurong at home. Then I heard Sun Suanhua's secret story. So, Sun Suanhua patted Zuyun on the shoulder and said, "Little boy, after my master leaves, you should study hard. If this happens in the future, you must not hold your hand against the master. This also shows that I have gained a good disciple." Zuyun nodded blankly. He believed what Sun Suanhua said, but he didn't quite agree with it. "Okay, let me teach you how to draw the Firebird talisman. In addition, I also want to talk to you about some things about the formation." Sun Suanhua didn't seem to pay much attention. He took out his special talisman pen, dipped it in cinnabar, and then dropped it on the talisman paper. "Hold a candle all night." Sun Suanhua was a little tired, so he said he wanted to take a good rest and sent Zuyun away. Zuyun was also planning to visit Menguia, and on the way, he had to find a place to refine some elixirs for her in case she needed them after leaving. Of course, this place can only be in the misty Sword Cliff. When the sun started to rise, Zuyun arrived at the place where he first entered the Dao glass mirror. With a flash of his body, he appeared in the space in the mirror. He first released his spiritual consciousness and found that the blood ginseng didn't seem to have a long memory, so he quietly took out the magic sword again. All the elixirs were still alert, looking left and right, but found nothing. Zuyun instantly gathered his spiritual power and took the steps of Changshengju. By the time the blood ginseng reacted, Zuyun had already cut off several ginseng whiskers with one sword. Feeling the rich spiritual power, Zuyun smiled and threw the blood ginseng back into the soil. It would be a pity to refine all the blood ginseng into longevity pills directly. It is better to come here occasionally to cut some ginseng whiskers, and keep it for a long time. The blood ginseng immediately drilled into the mud. Zuyun didn't care at all. He put away the blood ginseng whiskers first, and then found a relatively empty muddy ground and took out a few huiling grass. This is the main medicine for refining heki pills. The age of the main medicine determines the quality of the pill. Ordinary huiling grass is only enough to refine a few heki pills. If the age is long enough, it can even refine 20 or even 30 pills. Zuyun only knew that this was said in the introduction to pharmacology, and he didn't know the specific difference. So I wanted to try this medicine garden. The five-fold time difference and the rich spiritual power here will surely make the spiritual medicine grow better. Zuyun used his long sword to dig out a few small pits. The spiritual medicine bought from the market was well preserved. As long as the fertility of this medicine garden is sufficient, it should be able to survive. After doing all this, Zuyun no longer cared about it, but returned to the cave and began to refine his qi. He had not practiced well in the past few days when he was out. In fact, he did not dare to practice casually. After practicing for a week, Zuyun began to practice the fire separation curse again. He understood the principle of practice makes perfect. Mysterious flames rose from his hands and smashed against the stone wall of the cave. Even the sword energy that was comparable to a strike in the foundation building period could not leave a sword mark, and the fire separation curse that had just been used naturally could not do it either. After practicing for a while, he drew a firebird talisman in the air, and then drew some fireball talismans, golden light talismans and earth shield talismans. Then he began to learn the art of formation, took out a few spirit stones, and placed them in the cave according to the directions. Time passed in a flash. A stick of incense burned out, and Zuyun left this place with a lot of harvest. In the Magian cliff, although the sun was high, it was slowly setting in the west. Zuyun walked towards the cave with light steps. But just as he saw the cave, he suddenly found several fist-sized black shadows rushing into the cave. What is that? Zuyun was startled, and rushed over with both hands holding the fireball talisman and the earth shield talisman. Just after entering the cave, those black shadows suddenly came towards him again. Zuyun was shocked, and when he was about to crush the earth shield talisman, a delicate shout came. "Boy, die!" It was Mengwei. As soon as the voice fell, these black shadows hit the earth shield talisman with a swish. However, these shadows did not bounce back, but stuck tightly to the yellow shield. In just 3 breaths, the earth shield disappeared without a trace. Zuyun was horrified. The shadows were already approaching him, and an inexplicable chill in his heart invaded his whole body. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 63. Mengwei, what are you doing? Zuyun made a quick decision. It was too late to use the talisman at this time. He made a prompt decision, quickly made a magic formula with his right hand, and the flames rose out of thin air. Liwo curse. At the same time, he took the steps of the immortality secret with his feet, and with a dexterity, he managed to avoid the attacks of these black shadows, and then blasted all the flames in his hands up. The black shadow melted when it touched the fire, and Zuyun was overjoyed. He took advantage of the victory and pursued him. Several flames, like mortal fireworks, emerged from his hands from time to time. After a few breaths, the black shadows were all gone. Mengwei walked out of the corner of the cave and looked Zuyun up and down. We haven't seen each other for a few days, it feels like 3 autumns. You actually know how to use magic. Humph, Zuyun snorted coldly, I saved your life and settled you down. I just came back from visiting relatives yesterday evening and I came to see you today. You treat me like this. If she hadn't been relying on her to find Ergu, Zuyun wouldn't have spoiled her. He, Meng Wei smiled sweetly and said, I am a demonic witch, is it strange that I am moody? Zuyun said with a straight face, you are not afraid of killing me, so you don't have the longevity pill to eat? Thinking of what Sun Suanhua told him last night, he blurted out. Unexpectedly, Meng Wei's face suddenly turned cold. We, Yalogo sect, are not like those despicable hypocrites in Wanjian Mountain. We are sanctimonious but do invisible things behind our backs. Yes, I am cultivating demons. Gong is also the young palace master of Yalogo sect. But I am a sage and cannot do such things as repaying kindness with enmity. Zuyun could tell that Meng Wei was really angry. He thought that if she continued to attack, he might not have the chance to stand here and talk to her, so he asked, then why did you suddenly attack me? Meng Wei said angrily, I don't know when you will come back, so why don't you make some arrangements to keep watch? You didn't call me when you came, how could I know if it's your sex foundation building period? The tone was still bad, but it was more or less explained. Meng Wei was more than 500 years old, and his status was not low. He was in the stage of forming pills. Zuyun scratched his head in embarrassment and said, I saw those black shadows in the hole. Besides, I thought it was some monsters and rushed into the cave because I was worried that something might happen to you. Seeing Zuyun surrendering, Meng Wei was secretly amused in his heart, but he still kept a straight face and said, I want you to save me. I have an extra 100 years of life. If those in the foundation building stage really dare to come and take action, how can I still be afraid? Did you kill them? Those black shadows were created by me to serve as sentinels. Humph, for the sake of you worrying about me, I forgive you. Meng Wei looked arrogant, sat on a protruding stone, and said, if I hadn't seen you, do you think that broken magic could burn away the black shadows? Zuyun smiled, as if that was indeed the case. These black shadows were extremely fast. If Meng Wei really wanted to take action, he would not be able to do anything for a while. For a moment, he didn't know what to say, so he took out the hosta from his arms and handed it over, saying, Meng Wei, I bought it at the foot of the mountain and gave it to you. A flash of astonishment flashed across Meng Wei's face, and he suddenly smiled coquettishly and said, little kid, you are not old, but you are very courageous. Dare you give me women's things? Zuyun didn't understand the meaning of these words. He pointed at Meng Wei's scattered hair and said bluntly, it's not like you are leaving soon and you want to help find Ergu. You have a high realm and a high vision. I don't know what to give. Just give it to Immortal. You must be serious. Meng Wei's pretty face turned red, knowing that he had misunderstood Zuyun's meaning. Also, a little boy who was only over 10 years old didn't know anything about the relationship between men and women. He grabbed the jade hairpin, skillfully rolled up the green silk hair, then inserted the jade hairpin and said seriously, Zuyun, let's get down to business. My current strength has returned to the chi refining stage, and I can be considered to have the ability to protect myself in Yunzhou. Once you are within the realm of Yazhu, UMO can return to the foundation building stage. Now that you are back, I can almost say goodbye to you. You want to leave now? Zuyun was stunned. That's right, people from Wanjian Mountain can come over at any time to save you from long nights and many dreams. Lingjian sect cannot stay for a long time, and Meng Wei's worries are not unreasonable. How about staying one more night? Zuyun frowned and said. Why, you can't bear to leave me. Meng Wei looked at Zuyun with another sweet smile. Zuyun shook his head and said, I'll help you prepare some pills and give them to you this time tomorrow. By the way, I'll arrange for someone to go with you. He was thinking of Sun Suanhua, but he needed a reasonable reason. Meng Wei's expression changed and he said, Zuyun, are you worried about me and why are you sending people to monitor me? Zuyun said anxiously, that's not what I meant. I was thinking that if there are people walking with me on the road, there will also be someone to take care of me. Meng Wei thought, that's right, how could this little kid have any bad intentions? Then he asked, who did you arrange for? Zhu Yun scratched his head and said, just don't worry about this. I won't tell you his identity, nor will I tell him your identity. Just pretend to be my sister. Why do I think you want to take advantage of me? Meng Wei stared directly at Zhu Yun. What good does this do to me? Zhu Yun curled his lips and said, since you don't want to, forget it. You just have to find a way to leave Lingjian section. I have my own way to get out of here by climbing out of the misty sword cliff. It's just that we are going in the opposite direction and we need to take some detours. Meng Wei thought for a while and then said, forget it, if you go around this way, you may encounter people from Wanjian Mountain, so let's follow your arrangements. Zhu Yun, don't reveal my identity. Don't worry, it really won't happen. Zhu Yun patted his chest and assured that Meng Wei was his best hope for finding Ergu, and of course he didn't want anything to happen to Meng Wei. I believe you. Meng Wei suddenly smiled again and said, how about you stay here and practice with peace of mind? If Ergu is found, I will ask someone to bring you a message. How about that? Zhu Yun was overjoyed. Okay, it's a deal. I'll go back and make arrangements now. After saying that, he stood up and left quickly. When Zhu Yun disappeared at the entrance of the cave, Meng Wei said to himself, this little kid is really interesting, but he is too kind-hearted. I don't know if he can survive to the foundation building stage. At this point, she sighed again, Meng Wei, why are you worried about him? Just worry about yourself. The journey to Yaezhu is bumpy, since Yaluo sect has been destroyed, I don't know who it was. The sect is entrenched. Zhu Yun returned to the valley, and Sun Suanhua was about to leave the valley. Master, where are you going? I'll go outside to listen to the news. Two old ghosts broke through yesterday to see if they want to make some preparations for the master's alchemy. After saying that, Sun Suanhua turned around and entered the mist formation. Zhu Yun was overjoyed, but worried that he would not have the chance to refine the longevity pill. He rushed into the alchemy room, took out a few blood ginseng tendrils, and threw them all into the copper furnace. He also moved some spiritual wood, ignited it with the Liwo spell, and then used all his fire spiritual power to refine the elixir. With the success of the first test, Zhu Yun completely regarded the Xiaoyuan pill as the Bigo pill to refine it. After about half an hour, the Xiaoyuan pill was successfully refined. Zhu Yun was also so tired that he was sweating. Although he is at the 4th level of qi refining, the spiritual power in his body is still lacking. After putting away the Xiaoyuan Dan, Zhu Yun suddenly remembered something. He stood up and walked around the copper furnace, touching his chin and thinking to himself, should he move this furnace to the Diwu glazed mirror to make elixirs? This will save him a lot of time in the future. He pushed the copper stove. It weighed about 1,000 kilograms, but if he used spiritual power, he should be able to pick it up. However, let's wait until Sun Suanhua leaves. Not long after, Sun Suanhua returned to the valley with a frown on his face, threw out a storage bag, and said with a sad face, it's over, little kid, Lin Zhenyang and Mu Lao are looking for me, and they want me to refine 500 yellow dragons in 3 days Dan and Iki Dan. Zhu Yun was stunned for a moment, thinking it was something, and then smiled and said, Master, I leave this little matter to my disciple. It doesn't matter, you can just go with peace of mind. Sun Suanhua was not in the mood to joke with Zhu Yun at this time, and said angrily, little boy, there are 1,000 of them, I work day and night to refine them. You just learned a little bit, can you refine them? 3 days later, if you can't get the elixir, you must come to the valley to find me. If I run away, will they still chase me? If I refine it for them and then run away, they will go out to suppress the bandits and make the new realm more stable. Well, I don't know where I'm going. Seeing Zuyun about to speak again, Sun Suanhua said again, don't tell me to wait until they come back from suppressing the bandits. Who knows whether the people from Wanjian Mountain will arrive first or they will come back first. Zuyun looked at him with a smile and then said, Master, you have a good sleep tonight, and you can set off tomorrow night. Sun Suanhua murmured, it's over, you little kid, you must be crazy. I really believed your lies. Master, Zuyun raised his voice and said, if the disciple says yes, then it is yes. The disciple promises that after 3 days, the pills will be given in full. 2 days are enough for you to run out of the Lingjian sect's activities. Already. Sun Suanhua put away his expression, turned around lonely and prepared to go back to the house. As he walked, he said, that's all, instead of waiting for the people from Wanjian Mountain to come, it is better to give it a try. The wind is strong tonight, so let's run tomorrow. Zuyun chuckled and suddenly said, Master, this disciple came back from visiting relatives this time and quietly brought his little sister in. You also said that Yunzhou is a shabby place, why not take my little sister Yunyazu away? Vision. Sun Suanhua paused suddenly, then turned back and roared, little kid, don't even think about it. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 64. Zuyun had made up his mind. He knew that the route that Mengwei mentioned to cross the mountain must be the route that Ergu took to escape. But since Mengwei said that they might run into someone from Wanjian Mountain, this route must be blocked. Going through the mountain gate was the only way at the moment. Sun Suanhua had been preparing for so many years. It was better to let him bring someone with him than to go in the dark. Master, don't say that the disciple threatened you. As long as she stays in Lingjian sect, the disciple will not refine medicine. You decide. I said no, that's it. Sun Suanhua blew his beard and glared again, and returned to his room angrily, slamming the door. Zuyun shrugged. He believed that Sun Suanhua would agree. He was just scared by the 1,000 pills. It was still early at this time. Zuyun thought for a while and left the valley again. Sun Suanhua was still here, and many things were not convenient to do. He decided to go to pay tribute to Zhang Tianyuan. Fifth junior brother, where are you going? Before they reached the mountain gate, Qin Lycan came up to greet them with a smile. Senior brother Lycan, Zuyun bowed first, then said, I want to go see senior brother Tianyuan. I wonder where senior brother buried him at that time. Qin Lycan's face was embarrassed and he said, how can we, the outer disciples of the Qi refining stage, have a place to bury? I just buried him in the back mountain and erected a monument. Senior brother, thank you for your trouble. Zuyun knew that Zhang Tianyuan had practiced Taoism for 100 years. Even if he had relatives in the mortal world, they were probably at least several generations apart. He was a lonely man. Qin Lycan was able to bury him, which was much better than those who died outside and left no body. Senior brother Lycan, I'll go see senior brother Tianyuan. Zuyun sighed slightly. Thoughtful. After saying goodbye to Qin Lycan, Zuyun walked towards the back mountain. It was only about an incense stick before Zuyun saw a slope. The terrain here is not suitable for cultivation or building houses, and no disciples will come here. From a distance, Zuyun saw a mound on a relatively flat slope. In the center of the mound, there was a sign, which must be Zhang Tianyuan's tomb. Zuyun's steps suddenly became heavy, and Zhang Tianyuan's cynical and indifferent expression and tone emerged in his mind. I still remember that on the way to Lingjian sect with him, he drank mortal rice wine, and Zuyun asked curiously, Master Zhang, you have been drinking, aren't you afraid of getting drunk? Zhang Tianyuan laughed, little kid, do you think I am drunk? Zuyun shook his head to indicate that he didn't know. Zhang Tianyuan took another sip and said, whether I am drunk or not is in your eyes. But whether I am awake or not is in my own heart. Zuyun was confused at the time, but when he recalled it again, he suddenly understood it again. Master Zhang, Senior Brother Zhang. All cultivators in the world are in dreams, only you live the most realistically. Looking at the simple and inferior wooden sign, Zuyun sat down and took out the cup of spiritual wine from his arms. Senior Brother Zhang, I don't know if you died because of this spiritual wine, or died for my treasure hunt. In short, it has nothing to do with me, Zuyun. It is true that your cultivation can't go any further, and your lifespan is only 20 to 30 years at most. But I, a kid, have received a great favor from you after all. I have killed all three of you, so I have the face to come and see you. This time, let you drink enough. Zuyun opened the wine seal, and the unique wine aroma filled the entire slope. He slowly raised the wine cup and tilted it, and the spiritual wine that was regarded as a treasure by those casual cultivators just rushed into the mud. When the wine was almost finished, Zuyun put his mouth close to him. Brother Zhang, you've finished your drink, now it's my turn to toast you. I'll finish it, you can do whatever you want. After saying that, Zuyun stood up, a sense of heroism surged in his heart, and he drank half a cup of wine. Pa! Throwing the empty cup on the ground, Zuyun wiped the corner of his mouth and said, Brother Zhang, you are right. Whether you are drunk or not depends on others, but whether you are awake or not depends on your own heart. I will treat you to a drink again on this day next year. Zuyun suddenly knelt on the ground, kowtowed heavily to the spirit tablet, then stood up and strode away. For a long while. Not far from the slope, a petite figure slowly stood up and murmured, Big brother, second brother, this enemy is really in the Lingjian sect. I have been accepted as the last disciple by the Lingjian sect master. I have been reborn with a secret method, and I have awakened the mutated ice spirit root. Next year at this time, I will definitely be able to cultivate to the 4th level of Qi refining. If he dares to come here to pay tribute, I will directly raise her head to pay tribute to you. She slowly retracted her gaze and knelt down in front of the two inconspicuous small earthen slopes. She bowed down, with her forehead touching the ground, and did not get up for a long time. There were two simple wooden signs on each of the earthen slopes. Big brother's tomb, little sister Sun Qiniang stands. Second brother's tomb, little sister Sun Qiniang stands. Half an hour later, the night had enveloped the entire Lingjian sect. There were shouts in Sun Qiniang's ears. Junior sister, where are you? Sun Qiniang quickly stood up and wiped the corners of her eyes, but only wiped some sand. After so long, her tears had long dried up. Brother Meng, I'm here. Sun Qiniang said in a tender voice. Hey, why are you still here? It's getting dark, go back quickly, otherwise the master will be worried. Well, I forgot to cry. Sun Qiniang went to the direction where the voice came from, and soon saw a round head. Master is so kind to you. I used to ask me not to do anything but practice every day. It's better now. You didn't come back, so you asked me to come find you. The big dog just said it casually, not really complaining. Under Lin Zhenyang, he is now the only close disciple left. The rest were either sent to Wanjian Mountain early, or were not talented enough and became ordinary disciples. It's rare that the master brought in a little junior sister yesterday. She looked smart, and she was only 6 years old. Not to mention the big dog, she was very happy. Thank you, senior brother Meng, you are so kind to me. Sun Qiniang blinked and looked at the big dog with sincerity in her eyes. But only she knows whether it is true or false. You are my little junior sister. If I am not good to you, who will be good to you? Master has said that after today's matter, you can't go out again. Unless you reach the 4th level of Qi refining. If anything happens in the future, Tell senior brother, help you do it? The big dog is kind-hearted and took the initiative to say. Well, Kinyang knows. Let's go. If you don't go back, Master will be very angry and the consequences will be serious. The two of them walked towards the sect master's hall, one behind the other. Sun Kinyang looked back and said to herself, Big brother and second brother, I'll see you again next year. At this time, Zuyun and Sun Suanhua sat face to face, staring at each other with big eyes and small eyes, neither of them said a word. Finally, Sun Suanhua couldn't help it anymore and said, Little boy, why don't you go and make elixirs? Zuyun chuckled and said, Master, as I said, if you take my little sister out, I will naturally go to refine pills. I don't even care about 1,000 pills. But, Sun Suanhua sneered, I wonder why we can't see the sun today. It turns out that you are too boastful and the sky has blocked it. Master, you don't have a choice anyway, right? I don't make alchemy, so I have nothing to lose. At most, I will find another opportunity to send my little sister out in the future. If it really doesn't work, it won't be a big deal if I receive some punishment from the section. But you, after passing this village, there is no such store. Zuyun had figured out Sun Suanhua's weakness, and he was so angry that he blew his beard and cursed again, saying that Zuyun was not kind and did not appreciate his teacher's kindness. Zuyun didn't refute, just looked at Sun Suanhua. That's all, I really believed your evil deeds. Sun Suanhua angrily slapped his hand on the table and said, Bring your little sister here tomorrow morning, and I will also help her get ready. Zuyun grinned, Disciple, thank you master for your grace. If you want to thank me, get out of here. The two broke up on bad terms. Of course, this was only for Sun Suanhua, but Zuyun was very happy. Humming a mountain tune, Zuyun went to the alchemy room. After opening the furnace and refining some Heki pills and Huanglong pills, it was already midnight. Zuyun walked to Sun Suanhua's house again and said, Master, I have to go out to do some errands. You will be out of the sea of suffering tomorrow. Don't fall asleep in excitement not. Damn it, what are you doing in the middle of the night? Sun Suanhua opened the door fiercely and glared at Zuyun. He had just seen him going to make alchemy, and thought that this kid was trying to get away with it. Unexpectedly, this elixir was not refined very much, and this boy went out sneakily again. He was afraid of bad things. Zuyun knew what Sun Suanhua was thinking and said with a smile, Master, don't worry if you come back before dawn. After that, he ran away and entered the mist formation in a blink of an eye. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 65. Sun Suanhua had nothing to do with Zuyun now. If he hadn't prepared another disguise, he would have wanted to drag Zuyun back now. However, after much deliberation, Zuyun was a cunning kid and it was unlikely that he would do anything bad, so he simply returned to his house. Zuyun came out of the mist formation, found a corner directly outside the formation, and dove into the Diwu glass mirror. He wanted to help Mengwei prepare some talismans. Sun Suanhua has been preparing for more than 100 years. No matter how poor he is, he probably has some wealth. But Mengwei is truly broke, and his strength is still recovering. After burning 2 incense candles in the mirror, 2 full days passed, and Zuyun's face looked tired. But in my hand, I already have dozens of fireball talismans, golden light talismans and earth shield talismans. Plus, there are 3 firebird talisman. This was also filled with fire spiritual power, and Zuyun didn't know how powerful it was. He was reluctant to try. He was not proficient in the firebird talisman. It is not easy to draw the complicated runes in one stroke. Not to mention that with all his spiritual power in his danshan, he could only pour into one. Because of this, Zuyun swallowed a lot of Heki pills inside. Zuyun put all these talismans and the remaining elixirs into a storage bag, and put another 100 spiritual stones in it, and then Zuyun left here. Outside the mist, the fish belly was already white in the east, and he did not dare to waste any more time. Taking advantage of the hilltop of Lingjian sect before it was fully lit, he ran towards the confused sword cliff with all his strength. After the battle in Fangxi, Zuyun became more and more proficient in his longevity technique after incorporating spiritual power. Compared with before, the speed is not much faster, but he has adapted to this high-speed running. Soon, he emerged from the cave of Misty Sword Cliff. This time, he did not lean over rashly, but released his spiritual consciousness, and sure enough he discovered several groups of black shadows lurking in the surrounding corners through the morning curtain. The dream has no limit, the dream has no limit. Zuyun called softly to the cave. Huh? Why do you have to come to me so early today? Meng Wei's lazy voice came from inside the cave, as if he had just woken up. I've already made arrangements there, but I need to prepare and leave tonight. Meng Wei's petite figure appeared at the entrance of the cave. She pouted and said with a dissatisfied look on her face, "It's so early in the morning, why don't you let people sleep?" "Wait, I will take back those little ones first." She danced with her right hand, her sleeves swayed, her jade arms flickered in and out of the morning curtain, and the black shadows hiding everywhere quickly moved towards her sleeves. Zuyun was amazed when he saw this. After collecting it, Zuyun also stepped forward and handed over the storage bag and said, "Meng Wei, I prepared this for you on the road." "Save it? What is it?" Meng Wei's eyes lit up. When she heard Zuyun say to prepare things yesterday, she thought they were just like hostas, a mortal object at most, but she didn't expect to put them in storage bags. Hey, so many talismans. And pills? Spiritual stones. Meng Wei was even more surprised when he found out what was in the bag. You have seen the Fireball Talisman and the Earth Shield Talisman. Their power is comparable to that of the Foundation building period. In addition, there is the Golden Light Talisman. After using it, a golden light will explode, which has the effect of blinding several breaths. Remember, when using it, you have to close your eyes. Meng Wei nodded repeatedly and said with a sweet smile, "You are well prepared, and this golden light talisman has a lot of uses." She did not say that she had experienced hundreds of battles, but she had also fought against the monks of Wanjian Mountain for many years, so she was naturally rich in experience. By the way, there are 3 Firebird talismans in it. I just learned them. I don't know how powerful they are. Don't use them indiscriminately unless absolutely necessary. Meng Wei nodded again. There are so many, so there must be no danger in Yunzhou. Even in Yezhou, if you encounter a strong enemy, you may have to burn longevity energy. Meng Wei said to himself. Look, what is this? Hearing this, Zuyun chuckled, took out a longevity pill and waved it in front of Meng Wei. Xiao Yuan Dan? Do you still have it? Meng Wei's breath tightened. She could clearly feel that this longevity pill was no different from the one she had eaten before. In other words, this elixir can also increase her lifespan by 100 years. You know, the qi refining period lasts for more than 100 years, and the lifespan is at most 200 years. The foundation building period is 300 to 400 years. The elixir formation period is only 500 to 800 years. Of course, here you go. Zuyun threw the elixir casually. Meng Wei quickly threw the storage bag aside and hurriedly caught the elixir. She was afraid that the pill would fall to the ground. The better the elixir, the easier it is to lose its potency when it falls to the ground. If an elixir like this were stained with dust, its effectiveness would be reduced by half. Wish Yun. Meng Wei glared at him angrily. You still look good when you smile, Zuyun muttered, then reached out and took out a longevity pill from his storage bag. Come on, give me a smile. Meng Wei's big eyes suddenly stayed open. The small mouth also turned into a round shape, and even breathing almost stopped. Outside the mist, it was already bright. Zuyun just took Meng Wei's little hand and ran here. Before entering the formation, Zuyun warned, "Remember, never let go in the fog." Meng Wei was disdainful and said, "Can this broken formation still stop me?" "How high is your qi refining strength now?" Zuyun glanced at her and said. Meng Wei shut up immediately. On the way here, Zuyun also repeatedly told Sun Suanhua not to let Sun Suanhua know about the contents of the storage bag, especially the Xiaoyuan pill. Meng Wei knew the importance, but did not quarrel with Zuyun. It was because she felt a heavy feeling coming from Zuyun's little hand, which made her a little absent-minded. She also thought to herself, "I have lived for so long, but you are the third one. A man who met me." After passing the mist formation, Sun Suanhua was stomping back and forth in front of the formation. After seeing Zuyun, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Good boy, if you don't come here, my teacher will go looking for you." As he spoke, he looked at Meng Wei. "What a beautiful girl, is this your sister? Why don't I think she looks like her?" Zuyun said speechlessly, "Master, both twins are different, can't we each follow our parents?" "That's not what I meant," Sun Suanhua waved his hand and said, "I mean, your sister is prettier than you." Suddenly, Zuyun's face darkened, but Meng Wei chuckled. "Little girl, come with me, I'll help you put on makeup and change your appearance, and take you out in the evening." Sun Suanhua was afraid that Zuyun would get angry later, so he turned around and left. Meng Wei blinked at Zuyun and followed him. Zuyun shook his head and went to the alchemy room to refine the Heki pill. Anyway, being idle is idle. It wasn't until sunset that Sun Suanhua came out of the house with Meng Wei and found Zuyun. "Little baby, look at it, do you still recognize her as your sister?" Sun Suanhua said to Zuyun as if to show off. Zuyun looked at Meng Wei and saw that she was dressed in men's clothing, just like an ordinary disciple who had just started. If it weren't for those bright eyes, Zuyun might not have recognized her. Looking at Sun Suanhua again, Zuyun took another breath. Sun Suanhua originally had the appearance of a middle-aged man, but at this time, the fine lines at the corners of his eyes have disappeared, and his face is as smooth as a young man in his 20s. "Can't recognize it?" Zuyun was extremely impressed and said, "Master, you have never taught me such a skill." Sun Suanhua smiled and said, "This is not considered a skill, it is only used by Lingjian section whenever we encounter the foundation building stage. Your sister and I will be seen through by others. Under spiritual consciousness, nothing can be hidden." Zuyun understood that Qin Liken was guarding the mountain gate. When he let people down the mountain for registration, it seemed that he only recognized the nameplate. Sun Suanhua guessed what Zuyun was thinking, and took out 2 more signs and said, "I can carve these signs, as long as I hide them from Qin Liken. I am pretending to be a disciple who has been missing for 8 years after joining the sect." "What about my sister?" Zuyun asked. "Didn't 3 teenagers die in Magian Cliff last year? I had already memorized their names, so I just used one at random. Anyway, that idiot Qin Liken can't remember that people only recognize brands." Zuyun wanted to help Qin Liken refute it, but then he thought about it and really hoped that Qin Liken would have been a fool at that time. "I'm offended, senior brother Liken." After reciting something in his mind, Zuyun relaxed. The sky was getting darker, and Sun Suanhua's expression became more solemn. "Little kid, my teacher said that I need to tell you something before I leave, right?" When Zuyun saw this, he thought it was an important matter related to cultivation, and became serious. "My teacher is from Kixingman in Yeazhu, and my name is Ye Suanhua." Zuyun was stunned for a moment, then smiled bitterly and said, "Master, it doesn't matter what your name is, what's important is that I can recognize you." Sun Suanhua said with a smile, That's right, I didn't expect you to see through it. If we meet again in the future and it is inconvenient to recognize each other, you must not call me by my master's name. Neither Sun Suanhua nor Ye Suanhua can do it. As he spoke, he touched the dragon-shaped jade pendant hanging around his waist. Zuyun raised his eyebrows and said, "If there ever comes a time when my disciple calls you master, will you dare to agree?" Sun Suanhua was stunned, and then laughed, "I really dare not agree. See you again if we are destined." After saying that, he held his hands to Zuyun for the first time and said to Menguia, "Girl, follow closely." Menguia said nothing and blinked at Zuyun. When he turned around, a light flashed in his eyes. Of course she knows about the 7-star gate. I recall that back then, Yaluo sect and Wanjianshan were facing each other tit for tat, and they had a great time fighting. But the Kixuanmen were trembling with fear as they struggled to survive in the cracks. However, Wanjianshan was afraid that they would fall into the Yaluo sect, so he took advantage of the situation and wiped out all their monks in the pill-forming stage and robbed them of all their resources. Naturally, the 7-star sect and Wanjian Mountain became life-and-death enemies, but later the 7-star sect failed to recover. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 66. Girl, don't reveal your trap later. Sun Suanhua said in a deep voice after walking out of the mist. Menguia nodded and said, "Grandpa, I know." "Grandpa." Sun Suanhua almost choked, thinking that it must be Zuyun who said his age. "Yes, this girl looks only more than 10 years old, and I am more than 100 years old. If a mortal lives to this age, I am afraid that 5 generations will live under the same roof. It is not a disadvantage to call me grandpa. If he knew Mengui's real age and realm, I am afraid he would have to kneel down and beg for mercy and call me grandma to go back. Now, shut up and don't talk. You can say whatever you want after you leave the mountain gate." Sun Suanhua pretended for so long just to confuse Qin Lycan. "As long as you leave the Lingjian sect, you can fly freely in the sky." In the night, the two walked to the mountain gate one after the other. "Which two brothers are going out before dark?" Qin Lycan was playing with the things in his hand at this time. When he saw someone coming, he quickly put them away and said in a deep voice, "Junior brother Lycan, I'm taking my little junior brother out for some training. This is the identity badge." Sun Suanhua's tone was calm, but he was a little nervous. It wasn't that he was afraid of Qin Lycan, but he was afraid that Qin Lycan would find something wrong and immediately ring the bell to warn him. At that time, all the foundation building period in the sect would come out. In terms of strength, Sun Suanhua is completely at a disadvantage. Not to mention that Lin Zhenyang and Mu Huhui have broken through a small realm in succession. "Okay, you go." Qin Lycan found the names on the list, registered them and hurriedly sent them away. If it were usual, he would have to question the two strangers. But just now, he was holding a spirit stone. Nothing else. This is the reward Lin Zhenyang gave him today as the guide of Sun Qiniang. Mutated ice spirit roots, only 6 years old. This is a peerless genius. Lin Zhenyang broke through another small realm, which is a double happiness for him. In addition, he had a lot of extra resources after getting the storage bag of Wan Laojian. Naturally, he was willing to give Qin Lycan a lot of resources as a reward. And how could Qin Lycan still have the heart to do the work of guarding the mountain gate? But for a while, he couldn't find a disciple to take over. Qin Lycan didn't have the heart at all, and he wanted to free up his hands as soon as possible to practice well. This also gave Sun Suanhua a chance. Sun Suanhua took back his identity card, and didn't bother to pretend to thank him, and turned around and left. Mengwei was very calm. The two went down the mountain one after the other, and Sun Suanhua said, "Girl, your brother just asked me to take you to Yeazhu, what are your plans? Is there a sect you like that you want to join?" He thought Zuyun and Mengwei had agreed. Mengwei pretended to be confused and said, "I don't know either. My brother told me to follow you." This. Sun Suanhua thought for a while and said, "Girl, I'm going to find my old friend. If you want to follow me, I don't mind. But if that friend doesn't take me in, I can only leave you aside." Mengwei tilted his head, blinked, and said, "Then grandpa, take me to Yeazhu first." Okay, Sun Suanhua thought that it would take several months to go to Yeazhu, and there was plenty of time for her to make a decision on the way. "By the way, girl, what is your spiritual root? My brother won't let me say it." Mengwei felt that nothing he said would work, so he simply pushed it to Zuyun. Fortunately, Sun Suanhua didn't continue to ask, but took Mengwei to a post station and bought a carriage directly. "Girl, the road is bumpy, just make do with it." Mengwei didn't act pretentiously and got in. Sun Suanhua drove the carriage himself, and the carriage swayed towards the north into the night. Zuyun lay on the bed, his eyes wide open like copper bells. In the huge valley, he was suddenly the only one left. For a while, he was not used to it. "Why am I still lying down? There is no one in the valley, isn't it just suitable for me to practice?" Suddenly, Zuyun remembered and ran to the alchemy room. He first filled a whole storage bag with spiritual wood, and then directly brought the whole copper furnace into the Dao glass mirror room. "Refine the pill first, it's just 1,000 pills, it's a piece of cake." Zuyun lit the incense and candles to count the time, and prepared to refine the pill in the narrow cave. "Take out the spiritual wood and pour it all on the stone bed. The copper furnace can almost fill the entire cave entrance." Zuyun thought about it. It's not good to block the road. What if he still needs to go to the medicine garden? There is no other way. He moved the stone table and stone chairs to the side and pushed the copper furnace to the center of the cave. "Let's get started." Zuyun threw several Huiling grass into the copper furnace, ignited the spirit wood with the fire spell, and immediately used the fire power to increase the temperature. He had refined a lot of Heki pills, and he had already mastered it. When a furnace of pills came out, Zuyun's fire power was almost consumed. He did not rush to refine qi, but let the spiritual power in his body transform automatically, and he remembered the few Huiling grass planted in the medicine garden. He walked straight out of the cave, and the sound of his footsteps spread over, and those spiritual medicines were like frightened birds, and they all burrowed into the ground. The fastest one was the blood ginseng. It was chopped by Zuyun's sword twice in a row, which scared it. Zuyun laughed secretly, walked to the corner, and was immediately shocked. He saw that the few Huiling grasses not only returned to normal, but also grew amazingly. He squatted down and looked at it carefully, his face full of wonder. How can this be an ordinary 10-year Huiling grass? This is clearly 50 years old. If he hadn't planted it himself, he would have known that only he could enter the Daoliyulai mirror. He almost thought that these were wild Huiling grass. Impossible, there's something strange. Zuyun jumped up again. Originally, he was thinking about picking the Huiling grass here to make pills, but now, he just wanted to wait a few days to see. The time difference in the Daoliyulai mirror is 5-1, and it will only become 6-1 when it reaches the foundation building stage. The jade slip told him so. Moreover, it is the same when he has been going back and forth these days. Unless, the time in this medicine garden, will be different again. Zuyun scanned some other spiritual medicines. He didn't recognize these, so he couldn't judge the age. And those that have become spirits are at least thousands of years old. After thinking for a moment, Zuyun took out the middle-grade magic sword from the storage bag. Suddenly, the stems and leaves of several spiritual medicines shook again. Zuyun took a look and didn't take it seriously. He squatted down beside the few willing grasses, dug a few more holes, and planted a few willing grasses. Only with comparison can he see the difference. Zuyun put away the magic sword, clapped his hands, and turned back to the cave. He was so focused on the time difference in the medicine garden that he didn't notice that the spirit medicines that had not yet become spirits seemed to be relieved. After a stick of incense burned out, Zuyun left here, wandered around the valley, and looked outside the mist array. There was no mark left by Chen Hua, so he returned to the valley and entered the mirror space. This went back and forth until Zuyun collected 1,000 pills. After putting all the pills into a porcelain bottle and then into a storage bag, Zuyun left the valley and walked towards the mountain gate. He wanted to ask Xianxia where to hand in the pills, but when he arrived at the mountain gate, he found that the person on duty had been replaced by a stranger. This man looked a few years older than Xianxia, about 27 or 28 years old. "Junior brother, where are you going?" When he saw Zuyun coming, he opened his eyes and asked impatiently. It seemed that he felt that he was young and weak, and that talking to him would affect his cultivation. If it wasn't for his duty, he probably wouldn't want to pay attention to Zuyun at all. "Senior brother, junior brother wants to ask, where is the Den Pavilion?" Zuyun didn't bother to pay attention, so he got straight to the point. He originally came to Xianxia to ask for directions. "Den Pavilion, what are you doing here? It affects my rest. Get out of here." Zuyun was immediately annoyed. If it weren't for the sex prohibition of internal fighting, and he needed to stay in the valley for a while, I'm afraid a fireball talisman would be too little for him to taste. "Senior brother, I'm new here, I don't know where to go, please tell me." Zuyun put on a smile, and was about to find some low-grade and low-level magic tools robbed from the casual cultivators as a gift, but was interrupted mercilessly. "Get lost, you new guy, dare to talk to me like this? Didn't you hear me say you're disturbing my rest?" As soon as the voice fell, a figure turned over from a distance. He was full of vigor, and his face was full of red. His big head was particularly conspicuous. "Brother Meng, are you going down the mountain?" "No need for an identity card, I will register you directly." As he spoke, he nodded and bowed, trying his best to please. The person who came was Dago. "Hey, Xiaozu, are you going down the mountain too? Come together, I'll protect you." Dago ignored him, but raised his hostile face after seeing Zuyun and walked over quickly. Zuyun smiled slightly. "No, I came here to ask where the Den Pavilion is. My master asked me to send the elixir over. What about you?" After he finished, he looked at the thing who relied on the power of others, with a playful smile on his face. "I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills." Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 67. Den Pavilion is over there, senior brother, just go directly there." This disciple was frightened. He was able to stay in the sect until he was 27 or 80 years old. Although his strength was not good, he definitely had good eyesight. Just by the tone of their conversation between Dago and Zuyun, one can tell that the two of them are absolutely inseparable. Looking back at similar ages, he was sweating. "Go straight over, why don't you just roll over?" Zuyun asked back, and the big dog's eyes flashed. He glared at him, and said angrily, "We are all from the same sect, what do you mean?" "Senior brother Meng, misunderstanding. Junior brother, I just came here to guard, and I'm still a little uncomfortable with it, so. The big dog wanted to say something else, but Zuyun asked with a smile, "Aren't you about to break through the 6th level of Qi refining? Why are you suddenly going down the mountain?" Hearing Zuyun's question, the big dog turned his head and said with a smile, "Almost, I have touched the bottleneck, and I will be able to rush over in the next few days. I went down the mountain today to relax and buy some things for my junior sister. Good guy, yes. Zuyun punched the big dog in the chest and said, then you go quickly, I'm going to the Dan Pavilion too. Okay, you have to practice harder too. After the big dog finished speaking, he glared at the fellow disciple and said, if you let me know that you are disrespectful to Xiaozu again, don't blame me for being rude. As Lin Zhenjiang's close disciple, Big Dog has such qualifications. After all, those who guard the mountain gate are basically timid and worthless. Anyone with the 6th level of Qi refining would not come here to guard him. The 6th level of Qi refining is a hurdle in the Qi refining period. Before the 6th level, cultivation progressed relatively quickly. But after reaching the 6th level, it is like encountering a threshold, which is extremely difficult to cross. For example, the 4 spiritual roots, such as Zhangtianyuan, can only reach the 6th level of Qi after practicing for hundreds of years. The biggest difference lies in the flying of the imperial weapon. Although spiritual power cannot last long, it can still achieve surprising results. And this disciple, like Qin Lycan before him, was only at the 5th level of Qi refining. Yes, junior brother, I know. He hurriedly apologized, until the big dog walked down the mountain road, then he said to Zuyun reluctantly, brother, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Please have a lot of it, don't argue with me. He couldn't afford to offend Big Dog, so not only did his attitude toward Zuyun change, he even called him senior brother. Zuyun was too lazy to argue with him, but he was still not very familiar with him in the section he would inevitably use him in the future and needed to deal with him, so he took out a low-grade elementary magic sword and handed it over. Senior brother, what does this mean? No matter how bad the low-grade primary swords from the outside world are, they are still better than the sex standard swords. This disciple's eyes were straightened. I gave it to you as a way to ask for directions. Thank you, senior brother. He almost knelt down when he saw that Zuyun not only ignored the past suspicions, but even took the Pinfa sword so generously as payment for travel expenses. How do you call me senior brother? My junior brother's name is Mo Xin Peng. Zuyun. Zuyun put the sword into his hand, turned and left. I wish you, senior brother, if you have any questions in the future, you can come and ask me. If nothing else, I have stayed in the sect for 18 years. Mo Xin Peng trotted behind Zuyun and said. Seeing Zuyun nod slightly, he stopped and breathed a sigh of relief. Zuyun, on the other hand, shook his head secretly in his heart. It took you 18 years to reach the 5th level of Qi refining, you are so embarrassed to say that? Zuyun walked all the way to Dan Pavilion, and there was still a disciple guarding the door. Senior brother, I came here to help Master deliver the elixir. This time, he spoke first without waiting for the other party to ask questions. The disciple was stunned for a moment, then reacted and said, are you Master's son's disciple? Zuyun nodded and handed over the storage bag. After the disciple took it, he turned to the pavilion and shouted, Master, medicine has come from the valley. Coming. An old man with white hair came over, glanced at Zuyun, and then turned his eyes to his apprentice's hand. Thousands of them, are they all like this? He lowered his head and asked Zuyun. Please ask this uncle to take stock. Zuyun didn't know what to call him, so he thought of calling him uncle. Snort. The old man snorted inexplicably and took out all the porcelain bottles in the storage bag. 100 bottles filled the table at the door. He called a few more servants, and after ordering the elixirs one by one, he waved his hand to Zuyun and said, go away, go back, and tell Sun Suanhua that this action it's quite fast. Zuyun was sulking, but there was nothing he could do. But when he turned to leave, someone suddenly shouted to him, stop. Zuyun stopped and looked back. Call him Mu Huhui. Elder Mu, why don't you find a disciple? Zuyun asked, cupping his hands. Little baby, you owe me something worth 100 spiritual stones. When will you pay me back? I don't have time to see you on weekdays, but I happen to see you today. I will ask you this. Zuyun still had more than 200 spirit stones in his bag, but it was impossible to give them to him. I can't even bear to use them for my own cultivation, so I will rely on these spiritual stones to practice the formation next. Use one, take one less. And go to Fangxi to change? He has no idea yet. Zuyun simply raised his head and said loudly, Elder Mu, Elder Jin was present to testify at that time, saying that he would explain it in person in 3 years. It has only been 1 year, and there are still 2 years left. Humph, Mu Huihui looked gloomy and laughed coldly, little boy, I don't believe you can hand it over to me in 3 years. When the time comes, don't blame me for being ruthless. After that, he turned and left. Zuyun looked ugly. After seeing Mu Huihui walking away, his expression relaxed a little. When he was about to leave, he was stopped again. Xiao Waer, are you the one who made Mu Logui lose face? The speaker was an old man with white hair. Zuyun turned around and said nothing. The old man looked gloating and continued, hey, I heard about this. Mu Logui is narrow-minded. I'm afraid you won't be able to please him if you lose his face. It's also that Elder Jin is not weaker than Mu Logui. Elder Jin is talking about the ancestral teachings. Otherwise, you may have died a long time ago. However, Mu Logui has broken through another realm recently. In 2 years, the realm will be stable. He really wants to kill you, and no one can protect him. Zuyun frowned and said, Uncle Master, what if I can come up with 100 spirit stones? You, the old man seemed to have heard a big joke, my little boy, Sun Suanhua is a poor guy, where can you get 100 spiritual stones? So, go back and clean up, and then eat plain rice for 2 years die. Zuyun thought that this old man could put in a good word for him, but who knew that he would actually be angry with him? However, this also reminded Zuyun. I thought that after Ergo left, this matter would be settled after 3 years. Zuyun didn't take it to heart. The main reason was that 100 spirit stones were no problem for him. Whether it is a magic weapon, an elixir, or a talisman, the price can be offset. What was agreed at that time was that it was worth 100 spirit stones. However, what the old man meant was that Mu Huihui would never let him go. The reason why he didn't take action now was because he was afraid that Elder Jin would stop him. It's really troublesome. I even wanted to stay in the Lingjian sect for a few more years, I can't do that now. This old guy will definitely come looking for trouble in 2 years. Zuyun cursed in his heart and left, hearing the voices of the old man and his apprentice from time to time. What 5 spiritual roots, trash, stepping on dog shit and so on. What the hell, if the soldiers come to block it, the water will come and the soil will cover it. I just care about my own cultivation. Zuyun put the matter behind him and returned to the valley to start practicing hard. There was no need to make alchemy for the time being, so he moved the copper furnace back to the alchemy furnace. Otherwise, it would be inconvenient to set up the array and draw the symbols. In the mirror, every time an incense candle is burned, Zuyun will come out of the valley and circle around. When there are no abnormalities, return to the mirror. What goes around comes around. It wasn't until 5 incense candles were burned in the mirror that Zuyun remembered that he had forgotten something. He slapped his forehead, walked out of the cave, and looked at the medicine garden. I saw that more than 10 Huiling Cao plants had grown to a similar height. Hey, it's strange. The ones planted in the front quickly grew to 50 years old. The ones planted in the back were 1 day late, so why did they grow to the same height? Zuyun was stunned for a moment and stepped forward. He carefully compared each elixir. The 3 plants planted in the first batch seemed to be thicker than those planted later, and the spiritual power they exuded was more intense. The second batch has already reached 50 years old. No, will the flow rate be different at this time? Zuyun scratched his head. He couldn't figure out this problem and had no intention of practicing. After much thought, he came up with a brand new way. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 68. Zuyun first returned to the valley, walked around as usual, and ran to the outside of the mist formation to take a look. When he was about to go back, he found that there was an extra cross outside the formation. It seemed to be drawn in the mud with a sword. "Chen Hua, that kid, is looking for me," Zuyun muttered, and looked up at the sky again. The sun was setting, so he turned back to the valley. He had agreed with Chen Hua to meet at the stone tablet of Magian Cliff the next morning after the mark was made. Zuyun wanted to find out the situation of the medicine garden in the mirror first. He went to the utility room to move a lot of incense and candles and put them in the storage bag. Zuyun went directly into the Dao glass mirror. This time, he ran directly to the edge of the medicine garden, lit an incense and candle and inserted it on the side. Then he used the sword to dig a hole and planted a few willing grass. He also sat on the side and began to refine his qi. It was not obvious for a while, but he was ready for a protracted war. Time passed slowly until the incense and candles burned out. 12 hours later, Zuyun opened his eyes and looked into the medicine garden. Suddenly, he was dumbfounded again. The willing grass planted before was 50 years old. The first batch of 3 willing grasses were only a little bit thicker than before. The second batch was about the same. But the newly planted ones were 50 years old in just 12 hours. What happened? Zuyun felt that this must not be a problem of the flow of time. Otherwise, why did the age difference of the 3 spiritual medicines planted successively not widen? By the way, could it be a problem with this medicine garden? Zuyun thought about it and found a bowl-shaped magic weapon in the storage bag. He didn't know which robber's iron rice bowl it was. Put the bowl aside, took out the magic sword as a plane, and dug the soil in the ground. After filling a bowl, Zuyun returned to the valley and ran towards Sun Suanhua's medicine garden. Zuyun knew all the spiritual medicines here. The oldest one was only more than 30 years old. They were all ordinary spiritual medicines planted by Sun Suanhua himself, and they might be his own private goods. He took the sword again and carved out 2 small open spaces in the corner of the medicine garden, and then poured the soil in the bowl into them. Then he took back the spiritual herbs for experiments and planted a batch on both sides. Is it because of the soil in the medicine field? Let's come and see it at this time tomorrow. Zuyun thought for a while and lit a stick of incense at the edge of the medicine garden. Then he ran to the alchemy room and brought the copper furnace in again. In the corner of the medicine garden in the mirror, the spiritual grass could no longer be planted. Moreover, after growing for more than 50 years, the growth slowed down. It would be better to collect the alchemy and plant some new spiritual grass in it. After a busy day, Zuyun refined a lot of qi combining pills. Now the primary pills are not difficult for him at all. He just consumes spiritual power and improves his control over fire spiritual power. When his spiritual power was almost exhausted, he would cross his legs to refine his qi and draw some talismans. This cycle continued until the dawn outside. Zuyun saw that the time was almost up, so he rushed to the Magian Cliff. In the morning light, Chen Hua, dressed in black, also had a black long sword hanging from his waist. It was the black snake sword. He stood with his back to Zuyun, facing the wind, his clothes rustling in the mountain wind. What a heroic and cool boy. Hearing footsteps behind him, Chen Hua turned around and saw that it was Zuyun. A smile instantly appeared on his face, and he ran over to him. "Hey, Zuyun, you're here." This huge contrast, if Zuyun had not walked with Chen Hua before, he would have almost thought that he had changed someone else. I saw the mark you left, what's the matter? Zuyun asked with a smile. When he first met Chen Hua, he was so serious. After walking together in the market, he knew that this was a boy who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside and a little arrogant. Yesterday I heard Master saying your name in the room. I eavesdropped and found out that he still remembered the agreement you made with him. As he said that, Chen Hua took out a storage bag from his waist and handed it over, saying, "This is 100 spirit stones. Take it and return it to my master." At that time, he shared the spoils with Zuyun and also took a few storage bags. No, you can practice with it yourself, Zuyun thought to himself. This kid didn't save him in vain. He pushed his hand back and said, "You should practice quickly. You are only at the 4th level of Qi refining. With these spirit stones, you can reach the 6th level of Qi refining earlier. Zuyun, you probably don't know what kind of person my master is. He has broken through a small realm again, and his strength is even stronger than Elder Jin. If he is against you, who can protect you?" Seeing Zuyun's refusal, Chen Hua couldn't help but get anxious. "It's not about the spirit stones. Have you forgotten that I also have spirit stones?" Zuyun saw that Chen Hua wanted to argue with him again, so he said immediately, "You have to keep your spiritual stones for cultivation. You have 5 spiritual roots, and you need more spiritual power for cultivation. Without you, I would be dead, not to mention these spiritual stones." As Zuyun expected, this kid was born in the year of the ox. Zuyun cursed in his heart, "What's wrong with my 5 spiritual roots? Did my 5 spiritual roots eat your pills?" But he knew Chen Hua was kind, first shook his head, then frowned, and said, "I told you to take it, so take it. I don't need your spiritual stones." "Zuyun, you." Chen Hua was furious and said, "Yesterday, I heard my master say that when his realm is stable, he will come to settle accounts with you. I only have these 100 spiritual stones left now. You should quickly cultivate to the 6th level of Qi refining, and then leave here. You only have this 100 left." Zuyun widened his eyes and said, "Do you eat this spiritual stone as a meal?" Zuyun didn't know how much spiritual power was contained in a spiritual stone. But since it could be exchanged for an ordinary firebird talisman, it was enough to show that the spiritual power consumed was comparable to that consumed by a strike in the foundation building period. Chen Hua was given 500, and it has only been a short time, and he has almost used them up. Aren't you practicing that new sword technique? After coming back, I have been practicing with spiritual stones. I have mastered that sword technique almost. Chen Hua explained, and then came back to his senses and said, "Why are you asking me? Take it quickly, I only have this 100. Zuyun was helpless, thinking that if he didn't take the spiritual stone today, he probably couldn't pull this stubborn bull back. Then help him take it first, and find a reason to return it to him when there is a chance. But just when he was about to take it, a sword light suddenly flew in the air. The sword light fell straight at the two of them, and the invisible pressure immediately locked on them. Zuyun was horrified. How did Mu Huhui come to Magian Cliff? And Chen Hua immediately fell to the ground without being able to support himself. "Greetings, Master." Mu Huhui ignored him and let Chen Hua kneel. He turned to look at Zuyun and sneered, "Little kid, no wonder you don't take this elder's words to heart. You are quite rich." Zuyun felt like he was carrying a heavy stone on his body. He didn't have time to wonder why Chen Hua couldn't hold on, but he could barely hold on. He resisted the feeling of his body exploding and said, "Elder Mu, this spirit stone has nothing to do with the sect, right?" "It has nothing to do with it." Mu Huhui grabbed the bag of spirit stones with his right hand, and immediately flew into his hand. After checking, he laughed and said, "Yesterday I asked you for spirit stones, and you prepared them for me today. Not bad, not bad." He stuffed the bag of spirit stones into his arms, his face suddenly turned cold again, and he slapped Chen Hua out with a backhand palm. "You are a traitor, just like Zhou Huanghua." As soon as the scolding stopped, Chen Hua was knocked off the cliff by Mu Huhui, and disappeared into the mist in the mountains without a trace. Chen Hua. Zhu Yun's eyes were about to burst, and the spiritual power in his body was madly flowing in anger. He actually broke through Mu Hui's pressure and ran towards the downhill road. "Boy, you dare to leave before this elder speaks." Mu Hui glared, put two fingers together, and a green light emerged from the tip of the sword. It was his specialty, the wood spirit sword technique. However, these vines transformed by spiritual power were countless times faster than Chen Hua. But Zhu Yun at this time was no longer the same as before. When he saw Chen Hua fall to the bottom of the valley, he wanted to rush down to find him immediately, so he naturally used his spiritual power on his body skills. Huh? What kind of body movement does this kid have? It's like Sun Suanhua's, but a little different. Mu Hui found that his spiritual vines couldn't catch up with Zhu Yun at all, and he couldn't help but be surprised, but then he sneered, "It's a pity, no matter how fast you run, what's the use? This elder's small realm has been raised to the 7th level, and now it is the 7th level of foundation building." After saying that, the vines suddenly accelerated, and when they caught up with Zhu Yun, they suddenly split from his back to both sides. "Bind!" Mu Hui shouted in a low voice, and the vines on both sides made a move to tie up Zhu Yun on the spot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 69. Get out of my way. How could Zhu Yun be polite to Muju when he was so angry? Yesterday, he knew Mu Hui's temperament from the white-haired old man, and he was on guard when he saw it at this moment. After scolding angrily, there seemed to be an extra talisman in his hand. Without any reluctance, he directly photographed the talisman towards the vine. A ball of fire appeared out of thin air. Fireball talisman? Do you think you can burn mine if you can burn Chen Hua? Mu Hui looked disdainful, thinking that Zhu Yun was still using the same moves he had used during the sect competition a year ago to deal with these vines. But in the blink of an eye, his smile froze. I saw that the fireball did not fly out, but was suspended in place, constantly flipping and mutating. Another blink of an eye, and the fireball was like a broken egg. A sharp beak stretched out from one end, wings stretched out from both sides, and a bird's tail grew from the other end. Firebird talisman. Mu Hui was shocked and angry. Damn it, Sun Suanhua, you actually taught this kid all the skills of the Firebird talisman. But in an instant, the Firebird quickly took shape, flapped its wings, and used the remaining fire power to blow away the vines transformed by spiritual power on both sides. Not only that, the Firebird is still growing, like a fire phoenix that keeps growing. Xianxia. Suddenly, the fire phoenix made a clear chirping sound, and its lifelike eyes instantly stared at Mu Hui. Damn it! This isn't the Firebird talisman at all. Mu Hui felt that the person staring at him was a senior in the Dan formation stage, and the huge fire power was like a murderous intent. One word came to his mind: escape. At this time, how dare he think about other things? Let's save his own life first. Even if he was hit head-on by a normal Firebird talisman, he would still have to suffer a lot, not to mention, it was like a pill-forming period. Muju was so heartbroken that he stepped on his natal flying sword without hesitation, running his danchin like crazy, and fled in a hurry. How could he dare to look back for a second look? And the formed fire phoenix. After Mu Hui escaped, he suddenly collapsed. Because Zhu Yun has not fully grasped the essence of the Firebird talisman, this is a defective Firebird talisman. Otherwise, the formed firebird will definitely attack Mu Huhui. Zuyun didn't know about this. At this time, he only thought about Chen Hua's life and death. Finally, Zuyun rushed to the bottom of the valley. The fog here had long dissipated. He saw that the stone pillar that originally imprisoned Menghui was broken into several pieces and scattered on the ground. Chen Hua was motionless in black clothes stained with blood. Chen Hua. Seeing that there seemed to be some breath in his chest, Zuyun screamed and ran over. Just like when Ergu was injured by Mu Hui's palm, he took out the nourishing pill and stuffed it into his mouth like he was free of money. Ergu met Menghui by chance. After his cultivation was ruined, he learned the techniques taught by Menghui and reached the 5th level of qi refining. But who can Chen Hua learn from? Menghui is gone. Wish Yun. The whole bottle of nourishing elixir finally made Chen Hua wake up slowly. He opened his eyes and smiled hard when he saw Zuyun. You don't owe me master now. Chen Hua. Stop talking. Zuyun growled. Chen Hua looked like he was exhausted, his eyelids trembled a few times, and he couldn't hold on anymore and closed them again. Zuyun, if it weren't for you, I would have died on the way to Fangxi. Maybe it was due to the nourishing pill. Although Chen Hua was weak, Zuyun could feel that his speech seemed a little stronger. Recuperate first, recover first. Zuyun squatted carefully, stretched out his hands and thrust them into the ground, and then lifted Chen Hua's body up like a shovel. Only then did he dare to hold Chen Hua with a little force and stand up. Stop talking and recover. Zuyun gave another instruction, but Chen Hua did not speak, but moved his head slightly. It should be a nod. As long as it's okay, it'll be okay. Zuyun looked towards the top of the mountain of confused sword cliff. There is still fog in the mountains. These are natural fogs and have nothing to do with the fog produced by the mysterious sword formation. But it still blocked Zuyun's sight, and he couldn't see anything. Let's go, I'll take you to the valley, and I'll make elixirs to feed you. Zuyun walked slowly. He did not dare to use the immortality secret, for fear that he would aggravate Chen Hua's injuries if he walked too fast and in a hurry. Hall of Harmony. Mu Huihui sat in his seat with his heart racing. If it weren't for the fact that his forehead was covered with cold sweat and his hands were cold, he almost thought that what he just had was just a nightmare. Why is that kid's firebird talisman so different? There is also a firebird talisman in the Lingjian Sect's Talisman Hall, and it was painted by Sun Suanhua. Could it be that Sun Suanhua saved it and then drew some normal ones for Zuyun to use for self-defense? It's possible, it must be so. Mu Hui's eyes were solemn and he confirmed this. Otherwise, how could that boy Zuyun dare to dismiss this elder's words? It turns out that I have such confidence. Thinking of this, a fierce light appeared in Mu Hui's eyes. Wait, as long as you stay in Lingjian Sect, you will not be able to escape from this elder's position. After that, he reached for his waist and took out the storage bag. Boy, these 100 spirit stones will be used as compensation for scaring this elder. 2 years later, I will still come to you to collect debts. And that boy Chen Hua, who has a spiritual stone and doesn't respect me as a master, dares to give it to that boy Zuyun. If I hadn't found you eavesdropping outside my elder's house yesterday and followed you today, I'm afraid you wouldn't have known about your elbow. Turn outside. Mu Huihui reached out and took out a book from the table, flipped through a few pages, picked up the brush on the side and drew a few times. From today on, you will be expelled from the master by this elder. You will be a dog together with Zhou Huanghua. As soon as he put down his brush, someone outside the house asked loudly, "Excuse me, is Elder Mu here?" Who and what happened? Elder Mu withdrew his expression and asked seriously. Disciple Meng Beishi, help the junior sister receive the sword and sword techniques for joining the sect. Little junior sister, Elder Mu was stunned and asked, when did the sect master accept another disciple? De Go has been the only genius with dual spiritual roots in Lingjian sect in recent years or even decades. Even ordinary disciples know about it, let alone Elder Mu. Since he mentioned junior sister, it was natural that Lin Zhenyang had a disciple. I just received it yesterday. The sect master is currently teaching the junior sister, so he ordered the disciples to come and collect it and make a register at the same time. Well, Mu Huhui nodded and said, send her identity plate. Yes, Elder Mu. The big dog stepped forward respectfully, even though he was very angry about Mu Huhui's injury to the two dogs. But he has been shrewd since he was a child, and he is not stupid with a big head, so naturally he does not dare to reveal anything. This is why he works hard and practices hard. Just to one day learn more advanced skills and come back to avenge Urgu. He didn't even mention this idea to Zuyun. Just because he felt that Zuyun had 5 spiritual roots, and in terms of talent, he was not as good as him. Then let him take good care of Urgu and leave the matter of revenge to me. Sun Qiniang, Shanligan. After detecting the information on the identity plate, Mu Huhui screamed. Single spiritual root. This is a genius who can use resources to cultivate in Wanjian Mountain. When did Lin Zhenyang secretly accept this disciple? Looking closer, he smiled. I'm scared to death, this elder. It turns out to be the water spirit root that is most unsuitable for cultivation. Mu Huhui laughed and suddenly felt relieved. Among the elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, only the water spirit root is the most unsuitable for practicing swordsmanship. Needless to say, the metal system complements the sword cultivator. The wood element is also good, and his wood spirit sword technique has great control. Fire and earth elements also have their own merits. Only this water element. Mu Huhui wanted to suppress his smile, but he couldn't help it. He shook his head and threw a standard magic sword and sword control skills to the big dog. I tell you, little junior sister, practice hard, I am very optimistic about her. Big dog thanked him respectfully. Disciple thanks Elder Mu on behalf of junior sister. Disciple resigns. After saying that, he turned around and left, with an imperceptible sneer flowing from the corner of his mouth. Damn it, if you knew that my junior sister was a mutated ice-type single spirit root, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to stop crying. Returning to the sect master's hall, Sun Qiniang sat beside Lin Zhenyang. How did old Ghost Mu react when he found out it was Shui Lingzhen? Master, Elder Mu smiles very hard. The big dog answered truthfully. Lin Zhenyang laughed and said, you did a good job. In the past few days, my master has personally guided you to break through the 6th level of Qi refining. No one can say anything about Qiniang's ice spiritual root, but do you remember it? Disciple knows. The big dog said seriously. Disciple knows. Sun Qiniang also responded. Lin Zhenyang nodded, with a flash of light in his eyes, and said, okay, you first take Qiniang to practice the Qi condensation technique of the sword control technique. I have something to do as a teacher. After saying that, he slowly walked out of the house and said to himself, the people from Wanjian Mountain are probably arriving soon. The matter of Sun Qiniang's Bingling spirit root must not be leaked at all. Meng Beishi is loyal, but Qin Lycan. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 70. In the valley. Chen Hua slept in Sun Suanhua's original room and was unconscious. Zuyun estimated that he wouldn't wake up for a while, so he immediately moved the copper furnace into the Dao-glazed mirror in order to refine the essence-nourishing pill. After he was fully prepared, he realized that he didn't even have the elixir for nourishing essence pills. When he was in the market, he only thought about Heki pill and Huanglong pill, so he only prepared the main ingredients of these 2 pills. Even more Huiling Cao was prepared. Because whether you are increasing the heat when refining the elixir or charging the talisman with spirit, A huge amount of spiritual power is required. And now, he is only at the 4th level of Qi refining. No, going to Fangxi now, it will take at least a day to go back and forth. Why not go to Dan Pavilion to have a look? In the Dan Pavilion, there are not only elixirs, but also various elixirs for refining elixirs. It is similar to Futang. You can exchange sect contributions or spiritual stones for elixirs and elixirs. Of course, you can also use elixirs or elixirs in exchange for contributions. Sun Suanhua's previous task of refining alchemy was to obtain a corresponding amount of elixir from the alchemy pavilion. Without further ado, he left the space in the mirror and ran towards the Dan pavilion. "Little baby, why are you here again?" Outside the Dan pavilion, there was still the same disciple who was guarding him. When he saw Zuyun, he asked curiously, "Didn't you finish the mission of 1000 pills yesterday?" Zuyun said seriously, "Senior brother, my master said that he would teach me how to make elixirs, but there is no elixir. I thought that I had some contribution from the sect, so I came to exchange for some elixirs." In desperation, Zuyun almost said that he wanted to make an elixir. Fortunately, he reacted at the critical moment. "Here is the identity plate. What elixir do you want?" This was a business matter, so it was not appropriate for the disciple to laugh at Zuyun. Zuyun handed it over and said, "Jingyuanko, all the contributions of the sect here have been changed. Jingyuan grass. Do you want to refine the essence elixir?" The disciple crossed out all the sect's contributions on the identity plate and said, 100 points are only enough to exchange for 5 plants. "That's enough." Zuyun responded, and then pretended to explain unintentionally, "Master said that the nourishing elixir is relatively easy to use, so I wanted to start with this elixir." "That's true, the Heki pill and the Huanglong pill, your 100 contribution points are only enough to exchange for 2. With that said, he threw 5 Jingyuan grass to Zuyun. "Thank you, senior brother." Zuyun quickly took it, turned around and left. In the alchemy pavilion, the white-haired old man was thoughtful. He said he wanted to refine elixirs. "Master, that boy's voice is quite loud. I must have heard him correctly. I know that he owes Malaugui 100 spiritual stones, and it is reasonable to compensate for alchemy, but the question is, why would Sun Suanhua be willing to teach him?" The disciple wondered, "Master, isn't Master Sun the one who makes alchemy and draws talismans for our sect? I guess he wants someone to learn his skills and continue to contribute to our sect." The white-haired old man sneered and said, "You are asked to stay in the Dan pavilion for 100 years without any salary from the section. What will you do?" The disciple was stunned for a moment and shook his head. The white-haired old man ignored him and lay back on his rocking chair. Rocking back and forth, he squinted his eyes slightly, as if he was asleep. Inside the Diwu glass mirror, Zuyun first began to refine the essence nourishing pill. 1 piece of essence grass can be refined into 3 pieces. It doesn't take much time. After finishing the refining, Zuyun planted 4 more Jingyuan grasses in the medicine garden. "The reason why I practice 3 pills first is to keep them with me in case of emergencies. Therefore, it takes 1 day for these spiritual grasses to grow to be 50 years old." He was afraid that something would happen to Chen Hua at this moment. After planting, Zuyun suddenly remembered the Huiling grass he had planted in the valley medicine field, and wanted to take a look. When we arrived at the medicine garden, the incense candle beside the garden was more than half burned. Calculating the time, almost 9 hours should have passed. In 3 hours, it will be a day full of plans. He looked at the 2 batches of Huiling grass that he had planted, and his expression suddenly became happy. The piece of Huiling Cao placed on top of the soil taken out from the mirror is growing gratifyingly. The other piece, for comparison, let alone growing, is even a little wilted. Zuyun was overjoyed and ran over, looking at each plant carefully. Each plant is almost 20 years old. It seems that it is really related to the soil. No wonder the elixirs in the mirror have become refined. It is not only the effect of the difference in time flow rate in the mirror, but also the unique fertility of the soil. It's just this soil, what's the point? Zuyun fumbled around in his storage bag and found an introduction to elixir cultivation. Over the past year or so, Zuyun has mainly learned these methods, the best of which are talisman alchemy and body skills, which can be used directly. The second is the brewing and refining equipment. The last step is to plant elixirs. Formation Deo was only started to be learned after having the spiritual stone. Because he never had the seeds or seedlings of the elixir, and couldn't improve his strength, he didn't take it too seriously. If this book wasn't in his storage bag, he might have thrown it away one day. At this time, he was flipping through page after page, looking for information about the soil for growing elixirs. But I read through the entire book and found nothing useful. It even says that the growth of elixirs has nothing to do with the soil, but mainly depends on absorbing the spiritual energy between heaven and earth. If it had been before, Zuyun would have agreed with this. Otherwise, where does the spiritual power in the elixir come from? But I have personally witnessed the difference that different soils have on the elixir. How could I completely believe it? See if Master's experience is written in it. Zuyun stuffed the elixir of planting back, and then found the experience notes left by Sun Xuanhua. This time, he found something. Sun Xuanhua believed that the soil would indeed affect the growth of the elixir. If the soil contained natural spiritual power, the elixir would grow better. This is nonsense. Zuyun murmured, put away his thoughts, and walked towards the library. I've looked through all 3,000 books, and I can't believe I can't find any useful information. It happened that Chen Hua was also recuperating in the valley, and Zuyun was also afraid that the Diwu glazed mirror would be leaked. Zuyun had just had a conflict with Mu Huhui on Confused Sword Cliff, so Zuyun thought it would be better to avoid the limelight for the time being. Entering the library, Zuyun felt a sudden realization in his heart. He still remembered that he found the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra here, and then he truly embarked on the path of cultivating immortality. I hope that I can gain something if I look for books again this time. Zuyun followed the bookshelves and read them one by one. Speaking of Sun Xuanhua's collection of books, it is really diverse. Zuyun has never let go of books about mainland history, strange stories, and mortal legends. After a round, there are more than 100 books. After going around again and finding nothing missing, Zuyun went to Chen Hua's bedside and read each book. At nightfall, Chen Hua suddenly coughed violently, and Zuyun quickly stepped forward to help him up, patting his back to help him breathe. Water, water. Chen Hua said weakly. Coming. Zuyun put a pillow on Chen Hua's back, then poured a glass of water and fed Chen Hua to drink it. As if there was spiritual power in the water, Chen Hua slowly opened his eyes and felt confused when he saw Zuyun. Zuyun, where am I? As he said that, he looked around again. This was a place he had never been before. This is in the valley, don't worry, it's okay. Zuyun comforted. My master, didn't I make things difficult for you? Chen Hua wanted to struggle up, but there was severe pain all over his body. No, no Elder Mu took the 100 spirit stones and left. Zuyun remembered that he had thrown away the Firebird talisman, and felt frightened for a while. How dare you attack Elder Mu without any excuse? However, when I came back with Chen Hua in my arms, I didn't see any traces beside the stone tablet. Elder Mu should be fine, it seems that my Firebird talisman is not a success. Are you leaving? Chen Hua's eyes lit up, but then dimmed again. He shook his head laboriously and said, Zuyun, please leave me alone and run away, cough cough. Zuyun shook his head, Chen Hua, you almost died because of me. Can you think about yourself? Chen Hua smiled miserably and said, what do I have to think about? I am alone in my family, and I have no close brothers in the sect. I have seen it all over the years. The Lingjian sect is a group of selfish villains. Just even my master, if I hadn't had the opportunity to practice in Wanjian Mountain and exchange him for some spiritual stone pills, would he still have taught me the truth? In the past year, I have gradually reached a bottleneck, and he has gradually become disappointed. Let me go down the mountain to find the sword art. Zuyun smiled helplessly. He knew what Chen Hua meant. It was Elder Mu who gave up on him, and it was him who felt that Zuyun was different from others. Zuyun, I know my master. I think after this incident, he will definitely kick me out of the master's sect. I will never be able to receive elixirs again, and I am seriously injured. I am now your burden. You still want to protecting junior brother Zhou and adding me, how will you practice? Chen Hua roared, his eyes were bloodshot and lifeless. Zuyun's heart skipped a beat. If a seriously injured person loses his vitality, he may not be able to save him even if he wants to. In his haste, he shouted, listen to me, Chen Hua. Wanjian Mountain is likely to send someone here in the near future. If you reach the 6th level of Qi refining, you will have the opportunity to go to Wanjian Mountain. Don't you have a new sword technique, and you are successful in your cultivation? I have the elixirs, and I also have the spiritual stones. Get better quickly and practice here. As he spoke, he took out all the Heki pills he had recently refined, and threw bottles of them on the quilt he was covered with. When the elixir was empty, he took out all the spirit stones and threw them as if they were elixirs. These. Chen Hua was stunned, and his eyes gradually became brighter.